Welcome back to the beginning of the end.
Oh, it's a sad day today, Steve.
I mean, not that sad.
It's bittersweet.
Anyway, a little less than 3 years ago, we started this podcast.
Steve didn't want to do it at all. I had to kind of convince him to do it. I think I had stopped teaching and I was itching to do some kind of creative endeavor. And I've always liked the idea of podcasting. I mean, when I was younger, I thought, I might want to be a radio host or a news anchor. Like, I've always had these thoughts of doing something like this. So I think this was my way of living that out. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. And we felt that there were things we wanted to talk about with our walk of faith, Christianity, that weren't out there, that weren't being talked about, that we wanted people to know they could talk to us about.
Yeah.
And that was the impetus. The first season, the second season even. We're moving on a little bit more, and hopefully we're more positive. That was the goal in this season.
Yes. But it's amazing how many people we have connected with doing this podcast. And that's why I go back and say it is bittersweet that we are ending the podcast, because we have made connections with people who have been out of our lives for a long time that are now back in our lives. And that's been very cool to see happen over the course of these 4 seasons, plus a summer series.
And some of these unexpected encounters or re-encounters with friends or people have helped us learn and grow as well, which is always a good thing. We are Red Weather Christians.
I'm Jen.
I'm Steve.
And we are expats living in Spain, trying to restore faith in humanity one story at a time.
On this season of Red Weather Christians, we'll be highlighting the feel-good stories that make us smile and remind us of the good in humanity.
We hope that as you listen, you become more mindful of the good, and that if you don't see it, you do it.
Or you be it.
Yes, so we've connected with a lot of people throughout this podcast, and that has been awesome. It's also been sad. It's crazy to think that when we started this podcast, some of our listeners were alive who aren't anymore. And that is sobering.
Yes.
But if we could take something away from that, it's just that we're going to try to live life as fully as we can, always, which is one reason we are going to say goodbye to this podcast and have our last episode here today.
And what we look at the whole season is the good. So what good came from this podcast? We would say, first and foremost, as you've heard us, connections with people, human beings. Talking into the computer and talking to each other is great, but that's not what we did it for. We did it to connect to real people out there, friends, people we didn't know, perhaps, and see what good could come from that.
I think one of my favorite stories is that one of our most avid listeners is an atheist. That's you, Linus. And I just think that's so funny. And early on, I remember we were at a party and he was chatting with me and he told us, hey, your podcast, it's gold. And I will never forget that. It meant so much to me. And the fact that we can be here talking about Christian things and God and whatnot, and an atheist is listening and getting something out of it, that's pretty great.
I don't know what he got out of it. But
maybe he just... True. No, he just maybe enjoyed listening to the banter. I don't know.
And as we've gone different ways from people in the past anyway, we don't know where their faith journeys have taken them. But I connected with someone that I worked with at Lake Lundgren Bible Camp. And she and I are suddenly similarly tracking with our faith. And I would have never known that without the podcast. A friend from high school, I didn't know this. He's got thousands of podcasts. He's a big runner now. He was never a runner in high school that I knew. And he's there liking every post. I don't know if he listens to all of them, but Denny, way to go. We even had someone suggest hey, you guys do such a great job talking about stuff. Can you talk about these topics? And threw us 10 topics to talk about. We want to hear the your angle on this. I'm like, huh.
Yes, and this is just a friend of Steve's sister. Michelle, if you're listening, thanks.
And we use some of those.
Yes, and we really love Michelle too. She's our friend too, but it's just the connection initially was through Steve's sister, which was kind of random, but we love it.
And we have plenty of former students who wanted to hear their favorite teachers
Well, obviously.
talk about something. You know, they can't have us in the classroom anymore, but they can listen to our podcast. And that's been a great way to connect with them too.
Yeah. So I think our favorite part of doing this podcast was when people reached out to us because they listened to an episode. And I mean, you know me by now. I thrive on verbal affirmation. So anytime I got any kind of feedback from people that we know, it felt really good. I mean, we didn't get that much negative feedback, probably because they just didn't say anything at all to us.
Or didn't listen.
Yeah. All of this reminds me of a quote by, our favorite psychologist, Carl Jung. He said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." I love this for two different reasons. One, for Steve and me, as we do this, as we talk through these issues via the podcast, and also between us and the people who reach out to us who have listened to the episodes.
I thought you liked it because there's chemistry between us.
Well, yes, that's mostly it. Yes, of course.
But what we really want to get to is what's good about making the podcast for anyone. If you are thinking about making something, we encourage that. Make art, create something.
Right. And commit to it. We knew that if we decided to actually do this, we were going to do it. And we were going to have one full, complete season. And we did that. And then we decided, well, we can do another season. So we did that. And then we did that 2.5 more times. Because the summer series was just a little blip fun thing. So we have 4 full, complete seasons. And I would say if you want to do something, commit to some part of completion.
And as far as making art is concerned, it comes alive when you put it on display for someone else to see.
And that can be the hardest part of art, is doing it, but then letting other people see it.
You have to be vulnerable in that way.
I was mortified and embarrassed and scared when we published that first episode. Back in season 1.
Also going back, we listened to it ourselves and we're like, ooh,
so bad.
Audio quality, not top notch.
I know. And I think it's ironic because the way we're recording right now, we're just using the speaker and microphone from the laptop because our microphone stopped working. So the sound quality might be a little bit worse on this one. Sorry.
But there's a good book that also helps you, harness that inner artist.
Yeah, it's inspirational as well. Yeah, it's called The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity.
It's not new.
No, we've mentioned it on another episode, at least one other episode, but it is a book for any human being because the whole premise of the book is that every human is a creative human. This is what we were created to be. We were created to create. And in doing so, this is our connection to the divine. So it is spiritual, but it is not in your face. And it's not, it does mention God, but I wouldn't say in any particular religion, but just the idea of a God, a higher being, a divinity in your life that you can have connection with through creativity.
And part of the reason we don't start doing something is, I'm not a very good artist, or I don't know how to play music. I'm not a good writer. Okay, but step back and ask yourself this question. What would I do if I didn't have to do it perfectly?
And the answer is a great deal more than I am. And that is a great quote from this book that we're talking about. This is the question that she asks. And this is so true. And I can speak for me when I say I am a perfectionist. So it is very difficult for me to start a project knowing that I'm not going to do a perfect job on it.
I like to think of this one more in the kitchen. Jen, what would I cook if I had to cook it perfectly?
Nothing.
Exactly. I wouldn't do anything. But I've learned that, well, I can eat food that's not that great, so I can also cook food that's not great and then consume it. And it doesn't stop me from then adding creativity into it. I have beans cooking right now.
Yeah, you do. Hey, you're getting pretty good at making beans, I have to say.
It requires very little effort.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
And I don't have to do it perfectly.
Another thing that Julia Cameron says in her book, The Artist's Way, is the idea that creativity is in all of us, that it is not a luxury, but a necessity. We need it. Not only were we created to do it, but we need it to experience a full life. We need creativity.
And it can come in many forms. We're going to talk about a few of them.
We're not talking about, well, you have to go make a podcast now, or you have to go paint a picture. Art is writing, art is singing, art is going out in nature and observing. Art is so many things.
Woodworking.
Okay.
Metallurgy.
What?
Working with metal.
That's the word for it?
Yes.
Oh, it sounds like liturgy.
We can go with other things. Jewelry making.
Yes. Oh, singing in the stairwell. That's one I like to do. But again, I don't like to share that with anyone, you know? So maybe that's something I can work on.
It's on display for the family, though.
Yeah. Enjoy. I have a couple more quotes from the book that are so good. So one thing I like about the book also is that she uses quotes from other people. So yes, she wrote the book, but there are so many of these great quotes from other great people. One of them is by Elaine Arias-Misson. I do not know how to pronounce that. I'm so sorry. I probably messed that up. But he or she says, the purpose of art is not a rarefied intellectual distillate. It is life. Intensified, brilliant life. Oh, that's so good. So I think sometimes, you know, even you're going into college and you're like, well, I need to major in something that's gonna, you know, put me on track to have this kind of career that's gonna make a lot of money, and it's never in the arts, right?
Well, I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
But when I got a science degree, I thought that could make money and I could do art outside of my career. I'm not stuck with whatever job I have. I liked to be on the stage. That's how we met.
Yes.
If you listen to the summer series, you would know that. And I said, well, I can do community theater or I can do some other form of acting. Being on the stage, heck, being a teacher is like being on the stage, even if my job isn't that.
Yeah. And I like to think that when I was a teacher, it was a being on the stage experience for me, some of it, not always, but I did feel like I want to be the kind of teacher who is 100% in. Like I am on the stage. Like this is my last show, make it the best and give the students this amazing experience of being in my class. Like I want them to look forward to it. I want them to leave class feeling energized and feeling maybe inspired by some of the things that we talked about or some of the things that we did. So I feel like the artist comes out or can come out in probably whatever career you're in. And if not, there's always something else you can be doing in your life to channel your inner artist.
And hearkening back to those teacher days, we had plans for the day. We usually generally knew what the lesson was supposed to be, but given the audience, the students for the day or the period, we didn't know how it was going to turn out. And so there's this wonderful quote, one of the prayers from the prayer book we've already mentioned in the previous episode. May the reality that I cannot know the whole truth never keep me from bearing witness to what I can and do see. So in one class, I might have one example up on the board about some ridiculous scenario in physics. And in the next class, I don't use that one. It wouldn't connect the same way. And I don't need to be wary of not knowing what's going to happen.
Or being so rigid that you can't possibly move from the original plan. Like you have to be flexible and work with different personalities in your classroom too.
It's life. Think about, I don't know how my life is going to end. It doesn't stop me from living the life that I have right now. We don't only look to the end and know the whole story before we start living our story.
And going back to starting this podcast, we didn't know how it was going to go.
I had no idea.
We didn't know how it was going to end. We didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know how to edit. There were so many things. Like, it was a huge learning experience for us. And we were not experts when we started. We went ahead and started, and we did do our best, and we learned from mistakes, and we kept moving forward. But I think sometimes the inner perfectionist that is in some of us, me, I want to know everything before I start it.
Yeah, that's not me at all. And I'll give you a great example of this in our lives. Music. I like to create music. I've written a few songs. I like to play music. I sing a few songs. I play the guitar. I play the piano fairly poorly, but well enough with chords. And I will, as soon as I get the chords, start trying to sing the song. Because all I want to do is make music. And Jen can barely let me have that. I'll be trying, I'll be plunking away. I'll be in the wrong key trying to sing it, but I'll be figuring it out. This is what I'm doing. I'm just moving forward. It's like, Steve, wrong key. You're in the wrong key. I'm like, I know, I can hear it sometimes.
I don't know if you can. I'm just trying to help.
And I'm just pushing through, like, I'm going to get there. It's not there yet, but I'm going to get there.
It is so incredibly difficult for me to listen to Steve plunk through playing incorrect chords or notes, or he's in a different key than what he's playing.
And do I look like I'm having fun?
Yeah. Yeah. Way to go. I need to just exit stage left and let you have that.
It's never going to be perfect, and that's not what I'm doing it for.
I am super critical. It is something that I'm working on. I will probably be working on it for the rest of my life. And I'm not only critical to Steve or towards others, I'm critical to myself too. So yes, I'm working on it.
And whatever the art is, put it out there. I'm willing to put it out there. And we go back to that first artist's way quote we have, or a question. What would you do if you didn't have to do it perfectly? Well, I would just make music and plunk around and do whatever.
Yeah. I would write more. Definitely, I would write more.
And so part of why we're ending this podcast officially is to do those other creative endeavors.
Yeah, we feel like we've come to a natural end for Red Weather Christians.
It's been good.
It's been great.
Cheer the good.
Yeah. And we are moving on to, I'm going to focus more on writing. Well, okay. Number 1. The Spanish language. I need to focus more time on that and really learn that language. I want to work more on my writing, and Steve and I both enjoy music, so we'll do that more as well. And we're going to see where life takes us. Claude Bernard says, man can learn nothing except by going from the known to the unknown. I feel like this is apropos to our podcast. It's apropos to life in general, but also for this next chapter of our lives where we're not going to be doing the podcast anymore. We're going to be doing some other things, and we don't know where that's going to take us exactly.
And remember, Jen already mentioned it, but the arts are not a way to make a living. They are a very human way of making life more bearable. Practicing an art, no matter how well or badly, is a way to make your soul grow, for heaven's sake. Do it as well as you possibly can. You will get an enormous reward. You will have created something. And that's from Kurt Vonnegut.
Well, I love Kurt Vonnegut. And Steve and I both read his book,
A Man Without a Country.
There it is. And I loved it. It is one of maybe his only book that is nonfiction. He is typically a fiction writer, but this was my favorite book that I've read of him because he's just talking about life. And he is, I don't know, he is a conundrum. He comes across as very cynical, but at the end of the day, the takeaway from the book is be a good human, be creative, go and do stuff with your life, enjoy it, have fun. And so that's definitely a book that we would both recommend. if you need a little inspiration, perhaps to get out there and do something creative. Think about right now, what are you doing in your life that is a creative endeavor? I would suggest, okay, yes, read the Kurt Vonnegut book, read The Artist's Way. You'll realize my work, maybe I can infuse more creativity in it, or maybe I need to let go of work a little bit so that I have more room in my life for creativity.
And we instill this in our kids through school. Like, we want our schools to have music programs. We want them to have arts programs. We want these things for our kids, and then we forget about it for ourselves.
Right.
We need this too.
Yeah.
Now, I don't necessarily want to glue googly eyes on popsicle sticks and then add some arms and legs or something like that. I don't want to do that part of art. But we start somewhere and we create something, and it's fun. Our kids are excited when they come and show us these terrible pictures they show us.
Yeah.
That they've drawn.
Yeah. And do we keep cardboard from boxes of stuff that we've ordered or that we've bought so that our kids can use it to build forts and cut it and tie it and glue it and do whatever it is they're going to do with it?
Yes, we do.
Is it currently a total mess up on the top floor of our house?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And I think too, as parents, you need to be okay with some mess. Because if everything is tidy all the time, it inhibits creativity. So let your kids get messy, but you need to get messy too. That is difficult for me.
I'd say that's difficult when you're cooking.
Yes.
With the kids.
Exactly.
Where you're creating something and you want them to create this meal with you.
Yeah.
And they're messy.
I like to clean the kitchen as I go so that, after we actually eat the meal, literally all that's left to do is put those dishes that we just ate food from into the dishwasher and be done. So it is difficult for parents. It is difficult for humans to allow ourselves to be messy sometimes, but you got to be okay with it to an extent.
And another thing, as we've mentioned being on the stage before, I'm going to be the first to admit, I was never perfect on stage. Jen's laughing because she knows. Like, I missed whole lines, like 8 full counts.
Oh my God.
Of 4. I was supposed to come in and sing a solo. I didn't do it. And then I came in and sang my solo after those 8 full counts, or 8 measures.
I was on the stage with you when this happened. It was in Oklahoma. What was the song? Oh, the farmer and the cowhand can be friends or something?
That's what I was supposed to sing. I just didn't do it.
We were just all up there, and it was just like this background music of like do 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 do. And Steve was just kind of up there standing around like he was still in character, his face and his stance, but he wasn't singing.
And I was, the thing is, I knew I had missed my entrance because I had forgotten the first set of words or whatever it was. And so I didn't know how to get back in. And so I just waited for the music to end, and then there's this supposed to go like this, like a basic like drum beat. There's no music then, and then I sing it, and then we just go on with whatever's supposed to be in the middle of the song. It was far from perfect. That's pretty much every time I've ever been on stage, I am not perfect. And I know that going in, not as like a catch, like, oh, I'm not gonna be perfect. I just know, like, I've screwed up plenty of times. I keep getting cast for roles. It's okay. Everyone knows that I have this weird fault that I'm going to mess up something somewhere. And it's still good. It's still good enough. We've talked about being good enough.
I think that it is good that Steve and I got married because my personality is so different. When I was doing my poetry speech meet in 6th grade and reciting my poem, and I hadn't quite practiced quite enough because I was cocky and I thought I was good enough, and I got up there and I blanked out. Did I just stand up there until I remembered it? No, I ran off crying to my desk. That's what I did. And so, definitely a difference in personality, and that can be such a beautiful thing, going back to that chemical reaction quote. And I think that's such a cool thing about relationships, not necessarily with, a spouse, but just in friendships, that you find people who can compliment you and who you can just have a really great time with. And there are so many personalities out there. And that's part of the creativity in life, is creativity in relationships.
And so we encourage you to go create something.
A baby. I'm just kidding. I mean, isn't that the ultimate creation?
I guess. Let's do that.
No, thanks.
I just meant try.
Yeah, no. Steve got snipped, so that there will be none of that. But yes, we can still pretend. Moving on. And another quote that I love by Brenda Euland is, why should we all use our creative power? Because there is nothing that makes people so generous, joyful, lively, bold, and compassionate, so indifferent to fighting and the accumulation of objects and money. Wouldn't it be a better world if we didn't fight as much? I feel like I'm telling my sons this all the time. You guys, it would be such a better life for you if you didn't fight all the time. But there's some truth to this quote, because when my kids are in the midst of a creative endeavor, the fighting is less. They become more indifferent to it. It's a beautiful thing to watch. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, oh man, we hold on to it. But then the other part of that quote is that it makes us indifferent to the accumulation of objects and money. So instead of just like tracking towards making money, getting stuff, we can infuse the world with our creativity.
In an odd way, some of my art through life has been accumulation of objects. I'll expand.
Okay.
Dumpster diving or picking up other people's trash. I find it and I go, ooh, I can make something out of that. There was one, I know we have pictures of it. It comes up in our memories, Google Photo memories. I don't know, because we had to sell everything in multiple trips and across borders. And I picked up this bench. I was like, that's a cool looking bench. And I sanded it and painted it and put a new cloth on top and a new little squishy seat.
Oh yeah. Well, I did that part of it, didn't I?
No, you picked the colors.
Oh, the fabric?
And then I stapled it on.
Oh yeah, you did. Staple guns. They're pretty great.
And I created something. Did I accumulate another object? Yes, but I saw in that object something that was worth doing.
Oh, isn't that a beautiful analogy to humans, though? Like you see, every human has potential, even if, on the outside they look like they suck. It's like, no, there's something there. They might need a little help to get it out, but there's always potential there. Just like in that old ratty looking bench that you picked up off the side of the road.
Yeah, there's a lot out there like that. And we want you to see the good that could be out there, the good that could be in you.
We want you to go dumpster diving. No, you don't need to do that.
That's it. I would encourage that. Recycle, reduce, reuse.
Yes. I mean, we've done it a little bit here even. There have been a couple of things that we've picked out.
Oh yeah. Memphis wanted a chair and a desk for himself because his brother's got a chair and a desk. We found those.
Yes. And the desk has just a little hole in the top of it.
It's fine. He loves it.
Oh.
And so in that way, we've accumulated objects, but it could be a good thing. I'm indifferent to those objects.
Yes.
But it could be a good thing.
Well, that's the other thing, we got those for free, so we don't have some huge attachment. I think when you spend a lot of money on something, because the value of it changes in your mind because you paid money for it, you find yourself starting to become in relationship with things instead of with humans. Because our brains like to tell us, oh, well, you paid a lot of money for it, so it's something really important. Keep it really nice, and it just gets a little tricky. So just, to be aware of those kinds of things is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. We tried to use the snowball again, and it just wasn't working. And rather than keep using the snowball...
He's talking about the microphone that we've been using for the podcast.
We just said, let's let that go.
Yeah, bye. So for the very last time, we are Red Weather Christians.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Jen.
And remember, cheer the good.
Don't boo the bad.